Hey dancers, welcome back to our channel. I'm Julie and I'm the owner and one of the instructors here at Broche Ballet, an adult ballet school here in Denver, Colorado. Today I've got the wonderful Dr. Wes here with me from Highlands Sports and Spine. Today we're going to be talking about all about your pelvis, all about your hips, turnout, the position of your pelvis in order to make all these great things happen, to get higher legs, better turnout, better passe, all that great stuff.
Okay, so when we're talking about getting as much from the hips as possible in an open chain here, we need to make sure that we give it a fighting chance. So things that can limit range of motion, limit how high you can get into hip flexion are the position of the spine, particularly the low back, and position of the pelvis. So if Julie's facing me, what we want to make sure is when we go to raise our hip into hip flexion, we need to make sure that the pelvis is not dipped forward, and that's referred to as pelvic anteversion. So if the pelvis is dipped forward, and this is kind of a natural pattern for most people to just hang out in, just hanging out almost in low back extension with the pelvis dipping forward, this is going to take and rob the acetabulum, the hip socket, from its hip flexion range of motion. So the shape of the hip socket and where the femur comes into it, if that's rocked forward at all, the point at which the femur abuts the acetabulum is going to be that much sooner. So basically it's getting in the way, right, of the leg going up. Yeah. Your hips, your pelvis is going to get in the way of that hip bone. Straight on bone contact right here at the front of the hips. Yep. And this goes for basically any sport that you're looking to drive the hip forward. So in ballet, since you're paying attention to such small movements, it's worth the time in the setup to make sure that you've gone into sort of a posterior pelvic tilt as opposed to an anterior pelvic tilt. So you can do this drill in a standing position very easily, making sure that the ribs are tucked in and not flared. So ribs are down, almost in an expiratory position. And then you can just perform pelvic rocks forward and backwards. And this is a very slight movement in a standing position. But again, just a few millimeters into that anterior pelvic tilt is going to prevent you from getting as high as you want to get. So making sure that the pelvis is rocked back into a posterior pelvic tilt, and then from one leg maintaining that posterior pelvic tilt is what's ultimately going to give you as much of a chance at that hip in terms of getting into hip flexion. So small little drills, posterior pelvic tilt, making sure that the ribs are down in an expiratory position will prevent you from robbing that hip from any potential range of motion that it might have. Okay. Yeah, I always like to say, you want to think about if you were wearing a tutu, that your tutu would be perfectly level, that you wouldn't be sticking the back of your tutu up and around. Perfect. I guess that's the layman's way of saying about the tilting. And just keep that tutu nice and level. That's a perfect external cue. Using external cues is the most effective way at nailing down posture and ergonomics here. So making sure your tutu is level, picturing your belt buckle moving up towards the ceiling is a good way of cueing yourself into that posterior pelvic tilt, maintaining that belt buckle position. All too often, if you're lacking just basic trunk motor control, people tend to collapse through the low back into extension, leading to low back issues and also hip issues, because if you are extended in the low back, your pelvis has no choice but to be tilted forward into that anterior tilt. So you really need to think, again, long dots through the spine. As soon as you tilt the pelvis backwards, you'll feel the low back lengthen, and that's exactly where you want to keep it. In addition to having the ribs down in an expiratory position, this will pre-position everything where you need it to be in order to get as much out of the hips as you can. I get a lot of questions from dancers about this. They ask, should I be doing crunches every day? Right. Is that how I get this to work? Right. What are your thoughts on that question? So crunches are a no-no, it turns out. In terms of sparing the low back from excessive compressive forces, crunches have even been taken out of the Army's strength and conditioning program just because it's leading to too much compression on the low back. There's a better way to exercise the core and a more efficacious way to get what you're looking for in your trunk musculature. So a lot of the exercises that we'll be doing in addition to the sideline position that we've worked on together, is going to exercise the core in the fashion that it needs to in order to get the most from your dance. So maintaining no movement and just pure contraction between the shoulders and hips is the essence of dance, right? Being able to move the entire trunk as a unit without compromising spinal position, that's core exercise. So we'll talk on a couple different exercises that we can do to replace your crunches and address core strength.
Great.
To replace crunches and to replace highly compressive core exercise, there's 2 or 3 exercises that we recommend that you integrate into your program. They're all done at body weight. The first of which are the modified curl up. So what you'll do is you'll get on your back, feet flat on the floor.
Well,
So the modified curl up is done from the same position as a traditional curl up, but with a different intent. So we're trying to get a good brace going on here. That's the main intent of core exercise, is establishing a healthy brace of all the core musculature all the way around. Repetitive curl ups, where you bring your body all the way up to your knees and back, it only capitalizes on the strength of your rectus abdominis, which is just on the front of your stomach here. What we really want is to activate every core muscle all the way around the trunk, in addition to rectus femoris, on your sides and on your low back. So what we're gonna do, Julie's gonna tuck her chin towards the floor. She's gonna maintain that position. And then from here, all she's gonna do is raise the shoulder blades 1 inch off the ground and then lower them back down towards the floor. And then back down. Good, and again, and back down. And so throughout this exercise, again, we wanna have long dots. We wanna be as long in the spine as possible. We're not trying to curl through the spine too much, as we are just lifting the spine off the ground and then putting it back down. So when Julie comes up, the shoulder blades will slightly come off the ground, and then she'll go back down. And then she'll come up and then back down. So she's getting good activation of the core without overly compressing the spine. A second core exercise is called the bird dog. So we'll be doing that from a quadruped position on our hands and knees. So on our hands and knees, the bird dog exercise is a similar exercise that braces the core and exercises the core in an isometric fashion without overly compressing the spine. So Julie is going to extend her right arm and her left arm and her right leg off the ground. So opposite arm, opposite leg. Good. And then she'll come back in and she'll switch sides. And what we're looking for is, if Julie had a foam roller on her back or a glass of water, that basically would stay exactly where it is.
No.
Right. So we're trying, again, to prevent any motion in the spine while still contracting all the core muscles around it. So this is referred to as isometric core exercise, and this has been shown to be the most efficacious and safest way to build core strength and control. So as she's alternating arm and leg, Julie is focusing on minimizing any movement through this region. And it often helps to have a partner cue them into this position with just their fingertips. Excellent. Good. And that's the bird dog. So just 2 strategies to exercise the core in a safe way and effective way.
Awesome. Well, that's all for today, dancers. Thanks so much to Dr. West for coming to help us figure out how to get our hips into the right place by really having a nice, strong, and stable core so we can get higher legs, better turnout, better extensions, and all that good stuff. Until next time, don't forget to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Take care.